before anything else. I gotta stay hydrated. 2, 1. Okay, I'm now screen recording, and I'm recording audio as well. This time I'm recording on my iPad so I can have a bit of a different layout than mobile, because today I've got a few images from my recent trip this past weekend that I want to edit. Last video was just me editing. This one I want to go through and actually kind of talk my way through the process. But first, we have this shot leading down towards the ferry in Gibsons, BC. And every time you turn the corner onto this road, and you just see layer and layer of mountains. It's such a good shot. And I like that the foreground is darker. So I'm gonna try to bring up some of the detail, then see what it looks like if I bring down the blacks. And the sky is already pretty good. There's not much to do here with the basic light editing. I like going for a bit more of a teal look in the blue. Then I edit the saturation and luminance. There is a lot of blue here. And I like this because if we lift the luminance, then it creates even more of a contrast with the mountains fading in the back, which I think is pretty cool. So already we're looking a lot brighter, which I like. Yellows push towards orange a little bit. Don't have too much of that though. The trees, they can be a little bit warmer. Not too much luminance to worry about there. Do we have much of anything going on here? Yeah. So like the trees in the center section that don't have leaves, these are kind of being affected. Don't really need to play around with that too much. So the shot is brighter, colors are adjusted slightly, and really I don't want to do too much more to the image. It's looking pretty good as it is. If we come into effects, maybe it's a little bit of texture. Clarity really depends on the image, but I try not to go for too much clarity and maybe sometimes even knock it down because I don't want it to be overly sharp. That's typically where you start to get that over-processed look, like from the default camera. But here I'm editing the RAW or DNG file, the 48 megapixels from my iPhone 17 Pro. You can add a vignette, that will help a bit, but I don't want to end up overdoing it on the sky. And luckily it doesn't seem to be affecting it too much, but it brings in some darkness on the foreground, which isn't too bad. Grain, I like throwing in a bit of grain here. The image itself is pretty clean, so the grain adds a bit of texture, especially with all of the sky. Detail-wise, sharpening, masking, I usually put that at around 50% if I'm not sure. Because usually sharpening with no masking, it's trying to sharpen too much of the image. So I usually aim for at least 50%. I throw on a bit of noise reduction, usually around 10, even if it is a brighter, clean image. Just for it being a phone shot, there could be some potential artifacting or whatnot. So I do like to add that in. Optics, remove chromatic aberration. Lens corrections. Yeah, that's looking pretty good there. So if we go back to light, I want to edit the curves. So I typically like to flatten my image a little bit and then play with the contrast within that edited curve. All right, I think that looks nice. Cool. And then what I want to do, I want to add a mask. We're going to go for a linear gradient from the bottom up here, and we are going to edit the exposure. Bring that down a bit. So down at the bottom of the image, especially with raising the blacks in the curve, bringing in a gradient to then help darken things there, it helps bring the eye up towards the mountains and the sky. And I think this is looking pretty good. And whenever I start editing a batch of photos, I usually go for one main edit in terms of settings, and then I copy that. Then I take it over to the next image and apply it. And I might not necessarily make a LUT out of it, but I usually like to go through and customize the settings per shoot, because if the shots are all pretty similar, then the first edit usually works out well with the rest. And here, we definitely have a lot more blue going on. And this is Mount Elphinstone. Ta-da! We have a lot more blue, so if we come into color, we can play around with that some more. Yeah, bumping up the luminance, you can see just how much more it makes the this part of the land stick out right in the center. That's not too bad. Just dial back the saturation a bit. Yeah, brighter without looking too washed out. That's usually what I try to go for. I don't like it when my shots end up looking dark. Pretty good there. I don't really want to do too much more. Let's see if we straighten. I'm always curious to see how well it does. But I think for the sake of this, we're looking pretty good there. Another thing I like to do, I often do throw in a linear gradient again here. So for I want it darker, maybe that's a bit much. Maybe like around -1. We apply that. If we come through here, we add in another linear gradient and we add it up here. In the highlight areas, sometimes I like to raise the exposure just to show a little bit of where the light source is coming from. Yeah, that gradient on the bottom is a bit strong, so I'm going to go back and edit that. If we go for like -0.45, that's looking better. Yes, I like that. There's a siren outside. Huh. Ooh, this shot through the window of the ferry, looking out to some snowy mountains. And because we're looking through the window, it is getting quite blown out here. So if we reset the exposure, that helps. What do I want to do with this? Here, like I did in the previous photo, I'm going to add another mask with a linear gradient. But this time, instead of doing light up at the top, I'm going to make it darker. Because we're looking through the window, this helps give it a bit more of that tinted look, and then brings the focus down towards the snowy peak. The bottom is already pretty dark because we have the frame of the window and the corner of the seat in the foreground. With this, maybe a little bit of dehaze, just so it's not so washed out. That's looking good. And then color. What if I just bring down? Yeah. And then green, I'm not gonna get too much. So overall, I think that looks good. And for these, I haven't really gone and used color grading. Sometimes I like to go in and add it. Other times the images have enough color going on that I don't really feel the need to add anything. And so for here, like maybe we could add some warmth, then maybe add a little bit of green. But then there's already so much blue going on that I don't feel like we need that. If we reset that. Yeah, mainly it's to taste, and then I could come back to the same batch of photos tomorrow and then want to edit it differently. So yeah, right now, I don't really feel the need to add anything from the color grading panel there. If we come over here, this shot has a lot going on. We've got the ferry terminal, and in the foreground, we've got the edge of the ferry with the railing. And in the background, then we have the mountains just getting hit by a bit of sun, and then sky. And then we have the grit from the window that I'm shooting out of. So there is a lot of detail in here. Some of that detail washes away with this overexposed look. That's not too bad. And then here it is quite exposed, so if we just bring that down again, yeah, that looks good. And we are totally in the shadows here, so having everything be a bit more blue does make sense. And then I want to straighten that out a bit. Apply. But it does feel a touch colder than I would like. So let me see, what do I want to do? So here, maybe adding an orange helps. Okay, so that's fighting the blue a little bit. So maybe if we go into the shadow, reset that. Maybe add to the highlight a little bit. Yeah, that helps add just a bit of warmth while still maintaining that cooler look. I'm gonna bring in another linear gradient. Oftentimes I'll use this and not even use a vignette, because this way we have more of a smooth ramp of brightness, bringing the eye to the centerpiece, and then we don't have it affecting the sections that we don't want. Okay, this shot's pretty cool. Looking out a porthole, out to some trees. So we got the settings pasted here already. Effects. So we do have the existing vignette. Here I want the focus on the window, so we can go for a pretty strong vignette. And I might want to bring back a little bit of detail in the lights here. But really, I'm not too worried about that, because we do have the companion shot to this. Yeah, that looks good. I like that. Let's crop so we can get this thing centered. Yeah, that's looking good. Apply. Yeah, I like that. But yeah, through the porthole, a little bit loss of detail, but that is okay, because the next shot is a focus on just that. So then we paste. Here, that doesn't even make too much of a difference. What would I want to do? Oh yeah, bringing down the highlights, that helps. I feel like here, maybe I want to add in a bit of color. That works. And then I also want to do a little bit of dehaze. And then we can crop to get this thing a bit more centered up. I want to get rid of those little straggling bits on the left side. Leave the focus just on the window. Yeah, looking good. All right, that's generally how I edit photos with Lightroom Mobile. If I'm taking the shots on my phone, then I'm usually editing them right on my phone, but I wanted to try editing on the iPad for a bit of a different experience and seeing what the format looks like video-wise. But yeah, having the cameras of the iPhone 17 Pro in my pocket and being able to grab awesome shots like that anywhere I go, it's pretty sweet. So I'm taking a lot of photos, I'm editing a lot of photos, and I think it's kind of fun to bring you along and see part of my editing process. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you enjoyed seeing some of my editing process using Lightroom Mobile, and I'm looking forward to recording more of these. I take a lot of photos and I love editing, so I'm happy to share that. But until the next one, catch you later. Imagine if I wasn't recording.